I'm lying if I said I didn't want it. I can tell by your eyes you a dragon, purple dragon. Welcome to Spyro the Dragon. It's a pretty old game for the PS1 that I would argue is a little bit popular. I always generally liked Spyro. None of the games I've played of his have been necessarily bad in any way. That reboot series they tried back in the late 2000s was a bit weird, but I still enjoyed the more serious tone the games took on. And that epic plot driving The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning had me on the edge of my seat as a kid. Were it so easy, I'd say skip all the pleasantries and get right to talking about how awful this game's camera is. Yeah, you know what? Let's do that. Oh. Okay, so I guess you can switch the camera setting in the main menu. That's cool. The camera setting has two modes to it, bad and good. For some reason it defaults to bad unless you go in and mess with it, and that's exactly what I didn't do for this playthrough. Son of a... So this is gonna be a lot of fun. We start the game out where it tells a simple story about a young, unproven purple dragon who now has the chance to earn his man card by tracking down and defeating the mighty Nasty Nork, who has stolen a lot of the dragon's shit. It's a very straightforward platformer and beat 'em up after that, as you make your way through 5 overworlds, each containing a few levels and a boss. Spyro has like 3 abilities? Let me see here. He's got gliding, the charge attack, and breathing fire. Yep, that's about it. Oh, he also has the ability to reset the camera to right behind him by pressing the triangle button. Well, thank God for that. Now idiots like me have a way to suffer just a little bit less in default camera mode. So for starters, I'm overall just okay with everything going on here. It's a pretty rudimentary platforming experience. Most of the enemies are absolute cake and only really serve to be an object that's been placed in your path rather than a challenge to overcome. Like, honestly, if you replace the enemies in this game with a bunch of cardboard cutouts, I probably wouldn't even notice. One noteworthy wrinkle here that does actually shake up the formula a bit is the glide mechanic. This glide mechanic allows for a situation to pop up every now and then where you have to strategically pick your spots when making it across a wide gap. Otherwise, you risk plummeting to hell. Huh. Neat. Again, overall this entire system is nothing crazy, nothing particularly interesting or adventurous. It's very much a decent late 90s PS1 platformer. And it's got those iconic graphics to come with it, too. God. Okay, seriously, what the fuck? I feel like the charge attack really shines through here because without it, Spyro moves pretty slow, I'd say. With the charge attack, you can plow through levels at a much more respectable pace, making for a more streamlined, digestible experience. I'm not saying the game isn't fun without it, but you'd be hard-pressed to find an avid player of this game who doesn't spam the charge attack at least 70% of the time. It's just so much better that way. The in-game collectibles, which include the Dragon Brethren for you to save, the Dragon Eggs, and the Gems, I find to be a little problematic. First of all, the Dragon Eggs. Those get a pass. Second, saving the frozen dragons is not the best. Each time you save one, a cutscene activates where the dragon says some dumb shit and disappears. Sometimes they're giving you advice on how to beat certain enemies or find certain secrets, and others just say thanks and leave, almost as if they just can't be bothered to acknowledge your efforts. And that don't sit well with me, pal.
Acknowledge me!
This is definitely the most 90s thing I've ever seen. It also stops being cute well after the 5th dragon, because you gotta stop and watch this cutscene every single time. And I'll admit the cutscene isn't very long, but it just seems unneeded after a certain point. On the other hand, this is probably the only time we really get any sort of characterization of Spyro here. I mean, as for the bigger dragons, screw them, they're all a bunch of jerks anyways. But with Spyro, we get to see more of his cocky because he's got something to prove attitude here. And I think that's a really nice touch. The gems? Oh man, these things kinda suck. The biggest problem is that there are way too many of these things, and my OCD makes it very hard for me to not want to collect every last one of them, even though there's just so many. It kinda hurts the pacing of the game in my opinion. Stopping and smashing various containers in almost every room of every level just to get these things. I felt like I spent more time collecting these than I did fighting enemies or flying across gaps or generally just being a purple dragon, and that I do not believe is a great thing. The boss fights? Moving on. The final confrontation with Nasty Nork is a very weird experience. The first phase, I guess, is you chasing after some minions to get some keys so you can unlock the path to the Norkinator while he stands there and laughs at you. The second phase is a slightly awkward charging section where you're just kinda chasing him, but he's not like attacking you or anything. He's just running away like a little bit. So you catch up to him and attack him, and then he runs off again, and you have to make it through a brief platforming gauntlet to finish him off. This whole thing was just, I don't even know. Every boss fight in this game has basically just been the same repeat chase sequence, and I'm a little disappointed that they did the same thing with Nasty Nork. I mean, come on, he's the big baddie of the game. Shouldn't he be, like, getting slightly more special treatment than that? I don't know, man. So, that's Spyro the Dragon for PS1 in a nutshell. This was my first run-through ever, and in general, this wasn't anything close to a bad game in my mind, but also, it wasn't exactly the most life-changing experience either. To me, it's a serviceable PS1 platformer that doesn't really get anything wrong. My favorite part of the whole experience would have to be the flight sections. These are just so much fun, dude. At first, they kinda suck due to the confusing layout of the levels, but once you've gotten acclimated enough, they become quite the engaging puzzle to solve. The whole challenge is figuring out the most efficient path to smash all the objects before you run out of time, and there's multiple ways you can go about doing that. In general, I just love open-ended challenges like this. Challenges where you have more than one way to accomplish the task ahead of you. My least favorite section would have to be the entirety of the swamp world. I just have a bad track record with swamp theme levels. The aesthetic of them just never really jives with me. I hate how dull and samey everything looks, and it's always that same ugly shade of green they use to paint over everything. Gross. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you to the people in the comments who suggested I cover this game. Hopefully you're not too steamed by my final thoughts on it. I just love stomping on sandcastles, what can I say? See you next time for when I cover me some Crash Bandicoot.